Welcome back to the Operational Risk Management series. The first video of the series provided you with a description of the tools needed to identify the root cause of hazards for each task of your mission. During this lesson, the Naval Safety Center experts will describe the second step of the ORM process: assess the hazards. Remember that you have control of the pace of the lesson. You can pause, rewind, or rewatch as needed. Let's get started. Step 2. Assess the hazards.
Number one thing we need to look at on this, besides that we're breaking back down to 3 again, we need to understand this is initial assessment, no controls in place. Okay? So when we look at the 3 actions we're going to do for step 2, is we're going to assess severity, assess probability, and we're going to complete a hazard assessment at the end. So let's take a look at action 1 of assessing severity. When we look at the definition there, you notice there's an underlined injury, illness, property damage, loss of assets, or effect on a mission or task. Really, when we're doing a risk assessment, the number one thing we need to look at is what is the mission and task that we're doing, and how is it going to impact it. We have to understand this. We have it in the fleet. We look at on severity is risk to mission, risk to force. We are very good at identifying risk to force issues. We're not very good at looking at risk to mission. And that's something we need to improve upon, and hopefully after this class that you'll understand why we are so concerned about mission and the impact to it. When we look at the categories, we break it down there from categories 1, 2, 3, and 4. Remember, we have no controls that we've identified yet for implementation. We're going through them. I'll let you read those. So, when we assess probability, this is a likelihood that a potential consequence may occur as a result of that hazard. One of the big things on this too, when we go back and thinking about probability, think of the 2 things we talked about in step 1. Getting your SMEs involved, talking to them. What is the probability of this happening out there? They've been out there, they've done this mission before, get that reoccurrence, they know what's possible that might happen. The other thing too is get the data. If you can get data from the Naval Safety Center or Google, Secret Agent Google if you want to, use what you can get out there to pull from to get that information. When we look at probability, we look at 4 categories right now: A, B, C, and D. Understand what we're looking at here. What is the probability of that hazard happening over time? Okay, that's what you're looking at, time. So, here we're going to do an initial risk assessment, completing it. Here's a risk assessment card. You probably see them out in the fleet. We hand them out as many times as we can as we go around. And you'll see what probability across the top and severity off to the left. And when we look at these, we'll give an example of our prescribed route to work that we wanted to do. And we said, hey, you know what? One of the hazards we had was the curves. So I sit there and I'm driving my car, think about it, with no controls in place. What is the possibility, what's the probability of me losing my car on a curve and having it possibly roll over or something? Well, if that happens, I'm saying it's probable. With no controls in place, it's probable, or a B. When I look at severity of it, look, we're not all going to die when we roll over in a car, okay? But I would think we'd have severe injury or damage to the equipment and would significantly degrade the mission capability, because you are an asset. The person that's involved in this, driving a car to work, is involved in this and could have a major impact on the mission down the line for whatever the command's mission is. So when I look at that, I get a overall RAC or risk assessment code of 2. We do this for every other hazard we've identified. Do this process over and over till we're complete. The next thing we do is something we call rack and stack. And the reason we do that is we list all the numbers from 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, all the hazards in order to identify the closest alligator to the pit. Let's put it that way. We have to address the number ones that are a major impact to the mission accomplishment for risk to mission and risk to force. When we do this, because we have limited resources out there. Think about, we don't have unlimited number of personnel. We don't have unlimited funding anymore or equipment. So we have to be very careful with the resources we have available to us from the taxpayer and take care of that and use it and effectively to get our mission accomplished. Remember, when we're doing this initial risk assessment code, there are no controls, period. It's something we have a big problem with in the fleet. We see it all the time when we do these drills, is we like to put controls right in place, right away. It's human nature, got it. But take a step back, remember, no controls. So in review, we break down step 2 into our 3 parts again: severity, probability, and complete that hazard assessment.
You just listened to the second lesson of the ORM series. The lesson covered the actions taken to identify the initial risk assessment code for each hazard identified in Step 1 of the ORM process. Before moving on to the third lesson of the series, review OpNav Instruction 3500.39 Enclosure 1 Section 8B, and rewatch the lesson if needed.